This is episode 3 of Founder 64, and this episode's founder is a chef by trade, a dad, someone who drives around in a big Ram, someone who wanted to be Tiger Woods, I think, at some point. But now he's known as a powerhouse restaurateur. I don't think if you jumped in a car and drove 10 kilometers in any direction, you'd probably bump into one of his venues. You got Rice Boi, Market Bistro, the Udo General Store, which is inland, and then you got Piggyback, you've got Spiro, Bocca Italian. Did I miss any?
No, I think you got them all. Yeah.
Do you have any secret venues that you go to that we haven't noticed yet?
Each one of them contribute to my grey hairs. Got plenty of them.
I don't want to count.
No, you won't be able to count them.
I've got a few, actually. I hit 30 the other day, and I thought...
Oh, really? 30
I know.
counting?
I know.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
No, it's not okay.
Is it downhill from here?
Embrace it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying my best. It is, sorry, just to finish the intro, it is Tony Kelly. We're at Market Bistro now, and I remember you said that your son is working here as a chef.
Yeah, he started this year as a school-based apprentice. So he does 1 day a week at the moment, but fighting a losing battle of the fact that he's fully immersed himself into hospitality. He loves it.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he's full time next year.
Are you trying to push him away from hospitality?
I tried really hard. That battle was well lost a long time ago.
Okay, yeah. Right. I think maybe there's something in the blood. I was going to ask, because if he's following in your footsteps and he's a chef now, does he come to you with any business ideas?
Oh yeah, he's a bit like me actually. Like. He wants to run before he can walk. So yeah, he's got a little book where he writes down potential names of restaurants and potential menus, and he wants to open a restaurant or a patisserie in Paris, and like he's got world domination.
How old is he?
He's 15, but. You know, I know that. I suppose when you with your kids, you've always got stars in your eyes with them. But he's a special human being when he's in the kitchen. I mean, I'm talking, you know, a 15-year-old kid rolling croissants, making the pastry, lacquering and layering puff pastry by hand, macarons. You name it, the kids smashed it out. Like I remember going to a dinner party about 6 months ago, and he had ordered a 150-year-old sourdough starter off eBay from San Francisco. My wife and I walked into our house after about 1,000 glasses of wine and a big dinner, and there's 6 freshly baked loaves of sourdough sitting on our kitchen bench.
Which is probably what you want after 1,000 bottles of wine.
I ate so much of it that the next day I felt like I'd been run over by a train, but... You know, you're not supposed to be doing that when you're 15.
Yeah,
you know
he's like
a
little child protege.
Yeah, and he's so I don't know the word for it. When he locks onto something, there's no going back. Like when he says sourdough, he's just going to keep making sourdough until he makes it perfectly. So
would he be? Because I am aware that your granddad, he started a business on the Sunshine Coast. Yeah. Would you say that for you have the entrepreneurial blood? I mean, you've got your son who's...
There's no other real common sense way to say it, or else it'd just be flat out stupidity. But yeah, I think I was born with the entrepreneurial blood. It's too early with Aiden yet, whether or not that's what it is or whether he just loves cooking. But there's no mistaking the fact that the cooking gene is firmly dropped on his side of our family. So yeah, it's nice to see. And he's great at it.
You have so you've got your granddad who started a business. I think your parents were business minded. It's in your son, we think maybe. Yep. When you were 15.
Yep.
Can you, if you're happy, what was your first business venture? Do you have anything that you...
I was selling booze at school. That was probably the extent of it. It was funny, like, you know, as kids and teenagers, you know, I didn't go to a fancy school. I went to a rough school, and, you know, kids like they do now drink booze and do drugs and smoke cigarettes, and I never did any of that. Because I thought, why would I spend money on alcohol if I could sell it and make money? So I didn't do that. But I was a mad golfer as well. So what that involved was getting up really early in the morning, and my father would drop me at the golf course, basically right where we're standing now, which was Horton Park Golf Club. He'd drop me off here at like 6 a.m, and then he would pick me up on his way home at 6 o'clock at night. So
12 hours on the golf course?
During the holidays, absolutely. During school, my mum would swing past at 8 o'clock and grab me and drop me off at school until I got my driver's license. And then I'd go to school. Then she'd pick me up from school and drop me at the golf course at 3. And then my dad would pick me up and take me home. So it was intense. But I wanted to be a golf pro. So that's what it takes. And
I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I personally wanted to be a soccer professional.
Yep.
And they got to a point where like it was way too stressful. And then I realized there's a part of me that was like, you're not that good.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, what was that like for you?
My dad was a bit of a taskmaster, and I loved cooking, and I thought there's a fair chance I'm going to be a chef. And I loved it, but I really wanted to give golf a go. And my dad said to me, I'll allow you to live at home and you can play golf for a year. After that, then you've got to look at getting a trade. And it was about 3 months in, and I just knew that I wasn't good enough. Some of the other guys that we were playing golf with were so much better than what I was. So.
Yeah. Every time you're circling a 10 on your scorecard, you think, hang on, maybe.
It wasn't too many 10s back then, I tell you. But yeah, I mean, that was so much better.
Yeah.
So that's when I thought, I want to start making some money and I want to get ahead.
Yeah.
So I started my apprenticeship and my cooking journey began.
Oh, you're an award-winning chef. So you've had like a fantastic career in that. I'm curious to know, how did you go from being a chef to then opening the wine bar in Maroochydore? What was like that little? There must have been a transition there.
Back then, I was still so focused on cooking, and we had no money, so it was like I was in the kitchen cooking. Like I started my day in the kitchen and finished my day in the kitchen at the wine bar, and then throughout that journey, I realised that it was so important to work on the business rather than just in it. So I started paying more and more attention to what's going on at the front. I was very fortunate because my wife was the restaurant manager there, and she's probably as good, if not the best, I've ever seen at working a restaurant floor. She's unbelievably good. And then I suppose throughout my journey from that time, I realised that it's not just about encompassing the food, because you can have average food and great service and people will still come back to the restaurant. But if you have unbelievable food and shit service, you might not ever get them again. So it's really important to look at the business as a whole, and that's what really fascinated me. And then I become really passionate about beverage, wine, and spirits. So I embraced the entire business.
Yeah, but you care about every detail. I think you once said that you're like, I care about the cutlery and like the napkins maybe.
It's important for a number of reasons. But the restaurant industry is so fickle that everyone's looking for that next thing. But when you're opening a restaurant, if you pick the wrong cutlery, you'll go and spend $5,000 on cutlery and it'll be a discontinued line, and then you need to go and buy a dozen oyster forks next year and they're no longer there. Right. So,
yeah.
You've got to pay attention. And people try and open restaurants, and they do it, and cafes on the smell of an oily rag, and they go and fit the entire restaurant out from IKEA, and they realise that restaurants are a hard place, and then they find themselves have to refit their whole restaurant again in 3 months, and the poor man pays twice. And I've made all these mistakes, and it's nearly like a step-by-step procedure. You can see it, and it happens so often. Yeah, there's method to the madness, but it's taken me a long time, and I've made a lot of mistakes to be able to get there. That's for sure.
I guess maybe not speaking of mistakes, but what happened to the wine bar? Because you had it, you were running it for years, and then how did that chapter close?
Yeah, so we had it for nearly 10 years. I think it was 7 or 8 years. The GFC come along and basically flogged us to death. We went from having a restaurant, and I say it was successful. It never made any money. It was right in the middle of Maroochydore. We had fantastic business partners who were real famous local developers who they had a real passion for it as well. But we never set out to make a fortune out of it. We just wanted to create the best restaurant on the Sunshine Coast. We're probably a bit before our time. But we watched when the GFC hit, we'd be doing 30 or 40 for lunch and 30 or 40 for dinner Monday through Thursday to a handful of people. Like I'm talking 3 or 4 for lunch, 3 or 4 for dinner. Like the Sunshine Coast come to a grinding halt. Probably a bit like the world for an extended period of time. But so we put the restaurant on the market and we basically sold it for next to nothing. And I remember selling my car to pay my share of the last bills.
Oh, wow.
And then we moved down to Brisbane because we didn't have a house anymore. We didn't have a car. Yeah, I got an opportunity to open Stokehouse in Brisbane, and which in hindsight probably feels to me as though it was a bit of a cornerstone of my career, and that really gave me that what's the best word for it? When the industry acknowledgement that I was good at my job. I mean, the Stokehouse would do $300,000 a week in turnover for a 2-hat restaurant. So picture there was probably 5 2-hat restaurants in Queensland. We were one of them, but not one of them was doing anywhere near the volume of people we were. It was a truly unbelievable business.
I feel like there would have been also like you kind of touched on it, like it's a bit of a confidence boost as well for you, going from like the GFC sort of flattening that, and then that moment of having to like sell your car just to pay the last bills, because then you're standing at like your bicycle, and then with also no job, and then you move into you're pedaling down to Brisbane to start your next job.
I mean, when we moved, we had to borrow money off my mum and dad to pay for the bond in the house that we moved into, and we had Aiden was 3, Connor was still in nappies. He was maybe 3 months old when we moved down to Brisbane, and I was going to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and coming home at midnight. I remember when my very first day in that job, my wife dropped me off at the venue, kissed me on the cheek. It was October, and she said, "I'll see you next year."
Oh,
and
wow!
It was like, wow. And it was so true, but it was a $15 million build. There's an insane amount of money got tipped into that project. But it was truly one of the most special restaurants you'll ever walk into, right on the Brisbane River at South Bank there. It was great.
I feel like, I know, like looking into like your career, it seems like you've had these highs and some lows as well. And your time in Brisbane seems like it was definitely a high.
It was kind of both.
Bit of both? Okay, yeah.
Only because I had a very, very young family at home. My wife was extremely postnatal depressed. We'd lost everything on the Sunshine Coast, moved to Brisbane, brand new baby on a hip. I was at work all day and all night.
Yeah.
Then I encouraged her to go out and get a job so she could speak to somebody, another adult during the day. So by the time it was about a year into it, where I managed to get 1 night off and 2 days, and on those 3 days she would go to work for a good friend of mine at Montrachet, Terry Gallacher, one of the most amazing restaurateurs you'll ever meet. So she was doing 3 nights a week, and that was the best thing for her because it sort of cleared her head a bit, and it got her out of the house. And it's amazing when you're just locked up with 2 little kids, it can beat you around a bit. So, and it managed to give us an opportunity to save a few bucks. And doing that for a year, we managed to come back to the coast. We saved a small deposit for a very tiny little modest shack on Buderim, and that was our start back on the coast. So from Brizzy, moved back into Buderim, and Peter Kuravita asked me to go up and open Noosa Beach House at Sheraton Noosa.
I hate to, just keep bringing up maybe tough moments, but
go for it.
I find one of the most interesting parts of your story in terms of like I think it speaks to your resilience, or just the fact that like you've been able to come through some really hard times. But are you comfortable sharing about how you started Hello Harry? Because you started that with your best friend, Scott Hoskins, and but then it has sort of I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah, we from from Noosa Beach House, Scott was working down in Sydney in a corporate job. I kind of knew after about 18 months working back in hotels, I knew that my DNA is wired to work for myself, not for anybody else. So we were like, well, eventually we'll get back into our own place. Ken Reed, who was a good friend of mine and one of my business partners at Wine Bar, he was basically renovating the Big Top in Ocean Street, and he wanted me to do a restaurant on Ocean Street. I told him I didn't have any money. He gave me a start down there with a decent fit-out incentive, but I rang Scott up, and we decided we'd do a burger restaurant there where we'd do everything from scratch. I'd cook, he'd take the plates out. We thought if we can do 500 burgers a week, it'd pay our mortgage and we'd be able to eat. Well, we ended up doing 4,000 burgers a week, and it was a proper business. So, and inadvertently, we knew after a short period of time it was very franchisable. So we ended up franchising Hello Harry, and that was really successful. Junk came along right next door. You know, before we knew it, we had a big business, Donut Boys, and we had venues all over the shop. We ended up selling 50% of our business to some big business guys out at Toowoomba, and it was probably a couple of years into it, it all went to custard. The short version of it is after coming back from an overseas trip, I got sat down by my business partners and got told that my services were no longer required, which, you know, when one of your business partners is your best mate, that's really hard. And for whatever reason that may be, it beat me up. So I got a few bucks in my pocket, not much at all, certainly not enough to open a restaurant. I'd just moved into a house I couldn't afford. It didn't have any floor down. It had no paint on the walls, not a ceiling fan in it.
It doesn't really sound like a house.
Mate, it was literally a shed. And I didn't have 2 cents to my name. And I thought, I'm north of 40 now and I've got to start again. Yeah. I'm like, this sucks. And mate, I, to be honest with you, it was a couple of months. It was a really dark time for me. And if it wasn't for my wife basically kicking me off the couch and telling me that she had all of the trust in the world that I could do it again. And the day that I did peel my ass up off the couch to get in the car and drive to Mooloolaba to maybe hunt down a restaurant site or speak to a few people just to see what's going on that day, I swear to you, on that day that I made that decision, Dirk Long, who is business partners with Matt Evans, he rang me and told me that they've got leasing opportunities at the wharf, and they've just finished doing some nice renders and some architectural plans, and he'd like to show me on that same day. Now, if you're a believer in fate, you can really sink your teeth into the fact that there's all these little things that happen for that reason. Because restaurants like Rice Boi don't come around. Like, Rice Boi is a unicorn. It makes no sense. It was the shittest location. There was no one at the wharf. The wharf felt like it was falling down. And now you look at what Evans Long have done to the wharf and what we've managed to achieve at Rice Boi. You know, I've got to thank Scott and my old business partners and all of that hard time. There's a great saying that I say in my head all the time, that fiercest fire makes the strongest steel. And, you know, that's more or less my journey. And it felt like the crescendo was opening Rice Boi at the wharf. And now we've got a restaurant there that feeds 6,500 to 7,000 people a week. We employ, you know, anywhere between 450 and 550 staff. We've got 7 restaurants and 2 bottle shops trading their teeth off. But you know, you've got to learn from those lessons and wear your losses like a badge of honour. And if you can learn something from it, then the losses aren't they aren't a loss.
I feel like 2 things. I think one, I'm always like hearing that story. I'm like, man, you and your wife have gone through a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Call me lucky.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, she loves you.
Yeah, she's, yeah. I mean, I credit a lot of our success to Melissa, because it's a lot to sit back and watch that, and the trust that she has in me, and the advice that she offers. I certainly couldn't do it without her. That's for sure.
And then I was going to say another part is I think for me, or maybe people who just have like a really I don't know, they just look at you for what you are right now, and they think, oh, he's got everything, and he's got all these businesses, and they all seem to be super successful, and maybe he walks in and gets free pizza or whatever.
Nothing's free.
but then it is, I guess it's actually inspiring, I reckon, to hear that, you've gone through these really tough times, because I think a lot of people, even if they're not like business minded, they might think like, oh, I've had that. And also they might have thought like, I was north of 40 or 30 or whatever age they feel like they are, and they think, oh, maybe I don't have time to come back. Or I was kind of curious, would you give any advice to anyone who might feel like they're in that state that you were in, and what would you say to them?
I guess that it's never too late. I mean, what's time? If you're able-bodied and you can get out of bed in the morning, then have a go. I mean, it's hard. Always the hard bit about restaurants is that they're so capital intense. So they cost a lot of money to open them, and I always say it's not the most expense you'll find in a restaurant doesn't happen at the start. It happens once you get trading, and if it's failing, you can dust hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Because rent, wages, food, it's all very expensive. So to open it, it's not cheap, but to be running a pig of a restaurant, it can take the house of cards. So the restaurant game is challenging, but I've never been one of these people that said that I'm going to die wondering. Just get out there and have a go. It's my opinion. But I look back. I look at some people who aren't entrepreneurial, and they're happy to go to work and work a 5-day roster, and at 5 o'clock on a Friday they go home and their phone's off and they have a glass of wine and everything's peachy. There's a part of me that has massive envy over that, because I am the exact opposite to that. Like, I'm not satisfied. I'm never satisfied. I'm not appeased by money. I'm a hunter. It's not just the chase, but I enjoy seeing people come up through our ranks. Mitch and Eliza, my business partners, Luke, I've seen just through opportunity breeds the success, and then seeing them enjoy the fruits of their labour, buy a house, buy a nicer car. That's satisfaction on a whole nother level. And I know giving young people opportunity and training for me is that I feel like that's part of my journey now, and I want to try and create some future leaders from the Sunshine Coast. And I'll be really happy if I'm 80 years old and I'm retired and I'm wandering around the Sunshine Coast eating, and a few people who we've given a start eating in their restaurants, and casting my mind back to when they were an apprentice at the Wine Bar, or Market Bistro, or Rice Boi.
I love that, because it feels a little bit like there's a part of you that can't help but hunt. And, it's like because you said, you're like, oh, I'm kind of envious of people who are content, perhaps not being entrepreneurial or having this sort of business obsession. But for you, it's like, I can't live any other way.
My sister's exact opposite to that. She's got a great job. Her husband's got a great job. They live in a nice house, very modest, and they could not be happier. And they have, I don't know from the outside, everyone's got stress, but it's different stress. But I sit back and I go, oh, that'd be cool. But it's just not me. I'm not wired that way at all.
You'd probably get bored, maybe. you would. Yeah. I'll just change gears a little bit, just to get through some of the quick questions I'm really chomping at the bit to ask. One question I've always had about you is that you have all these amazing restaurants. You got Rice Boi, Giddy Geisha, Bocca Italian, but it seems that you never copy and paste one venue, even though it's hugely popular. So why not open a second Rice Boi?
I think if you take the creative away from somebody, especially a chef or a restaurant manager, that's one of the only things they have. So a restaurant needs its own soul. And I think one of the things that kind of cut me up a bit, not cut me up, frustrated me about when we started replicating junk back in the day is that when you multiply a venue out, even from 1 to 2, you take the same menu, you take the same format of the menu, you take the same chairs and the same paint, and when the second one opens, it's really hard to create a soul and a personality out of it, and it tends to become a bit plastic and a bit, just cookie cutter. And I think part of the success of any restaurant is it should have its own identity. You should be famous for something. What do you want to be? What do you want that restaurant to be famous for? And I think part of it is the space, part of it's the menu, part of it's the head chef, part of it's the restaurant manager. And I think that part of our success is the fact that we've really resisted doing another Rice Boi, because I don't doubt that if we took Rice Boi and put a Rice Boi in Noosa or Caloundra, it would heave. But I reckon over time, it wouldn't take too much time, but the new ones and also the brainchild, the number one, would become less hot, I think. But you'll never see another Rice Boi. That will stay put, because it's why would you, if you I'm not appeased by money, right, which makes me very difficult to deal with. Because if I just wanted to make money, I'd take Rice Boi and I would multiply it out and I'd sell licensing agreements or I'd franchise it. But that will only ever be one restaurant. And I think that if I feel, and this is truly how I feel as though I'm just one of the owners there, and I think the Sunshine Coast owns Rice Boi because they've been so good to me through COVID and the like. So I go, if I've got to make sure I just protect that Rice Boi.
Yeah, that's a nice idea, I think.
And I reckon there's a chance that it could be there for 20 years.
It feels a little bit more like, instead of copying, pasting, or creating these like cookie cutter Rice Bois, you're like, your intention behind creating like a new venue is that you want to create like a personality that people are attracted to. It's like, no, this is like a character.
Yeah, well, Giddy Geisha is Rice Boi's younger sister, and Piggyback is just piggybacking off the success of Rice Boi and Giddy Geisha. So yes, there's DNA that are the same. Like we've taken the coconut braised beef curry from Rice Boi and we stuck it in a spring roll at Giddy Geisha. And there's little nuances like that it picks up the identity of Rice Boi, and Rice Boi will always be the flagship, but there'll only ever be one. And I feel as though our agenda is just to protect that. Yeah. We never even book out the downstairs area or the beer garden of Rice Boi, ever. We've been offered massive money to do an exclusive use event there. We'll never shut that downstairs area. That belongs to the locals. When they want to eat Rice Boi, they need to be able to eat it. We just do any functions we do is upstairs. So we've even resisted the temptation of huge money to do big events there. It's the locals restaurant.
Wow, that's great. But is there a part of you that's like, you hate saying no? Because there must be a part of you that's like, man, that's a lot of money.
You do, but you can't run a business based on one event. And that's what I always say about restaurants. If you start closing them and the locals can't go there and have something to eat, then, sooner rather than later, you'll just be known as a function space. And if you're not appeased, you've got to always look at tomorrow's money, not today's. And they're all little things that I've picked up along the way. You can have a function, it's just upstairs. And Rice Boi does well, and I make a good living out of it, and I don't want to be greedy, and we just got to make sure we look after it.
I know that you offer like mentorships to some of the smaller hospitality owners, and I feel like the Sunshine Coast has so many people who are entrepreneurial. It's like the startup capital of Australia.
Yep.
But what would you, if you could give one piece of advice to people who are, I don't know, young adults wanting to start their own business? What would you say to them?
Just be laser focused on what you want out of the business. Like, what's the main objective? What do you want to be famous for? And really make sure that the entire battleship is pointed at that. That business should even have its own persona, a name. Who is it? What demographic is it appealing to? All those little things, because you cannot be everything to everybody. As soon as you try and start, no matter what the business is, if you try and be everything to everybody, you'll be 50% of what you should be. So that's what I think. In particular, hospitality. I can't speak about every other business. I only know hospitality. And if you try and be everything to everybody, you'll be, you'll do it half-mast.
Yeah. I mean, some of the best businesses, I reckon, you walk in and there's like one item on the menu and it's like, we sell ice cream. That's it. Do you want it or not? And it's like vanilla, chocolate.
We get criticised from time to time about not having coffee at Rice Boi. It's like, we don't sell coffee. We sell dumplings and beer and lots of it.
Yeah, if you want a coffee, there are like 100 cafes on the coast. Yeah. I don't know if you have any of this on your social media, but it's always on mine. I see people saying that if you want to be successful, you have to have an ice bath, you have to read 10 books a day, you have to get up at 3:30 in the morning. It's real like David Goggins, But do you have any routines that have helped you?
Yeah, look, I won't criticise the ice bath because I've jumped on that.
Every day?
But I do that because I'm old and broken. Yeah, I do actually. I do. I start my day with it. Sauna and ice bath and 30 minutes in a gym. But I do that for a number of reasons. One, I feel as though I accomplished something at the start of the day because I hate the sauna just as much as I hate the ice bath. So I feel as I've had a small win. But I got a bad back from my golf days, and the ice helps it so much. But it fucking sucks. Have you had an ice bath before?
I've had a cold shower.
It's got nothing on a 3-degree ice bath, I tell you. But I treasure my sleep. I'm a shit sleeper anyway, so I stick to a very, very stringent routine. If I'm not working in the restaurants, I try and make sure I'm in bed by 10. I'm an early riser, but not 3:30. I get up at like 6. But I've got 3 kids and 2 dogs, so whether or not I want to get up early or not, it's usually on me.
You don't even set an alarm.
No, and I try on the weekends at least once to have a sleep in. That's usually sort of 8 o'clock. But I don't stick to any super routines. I've got a routine when I come to work. I usually start my day at Market Bistro because there's a coffee machine here. So there is some elements to it. Reading and everything, education's great, but it doesn't need to be like I failed school. You could write on one hand how many books I've ever read. I'm a bit of an audiobook fan now. I passed hospitality, so I can sew a really good pair of shorts back in the day, and bake scones. That's what we did at hospitality at school. And I was good at maths. And the rest of the subjects I failed. School was a belligerent waste of time for me. And as soon as I got my license, turn left, go to school, turn right, go to the golf course. I'm going right.
Oh, yeah. So, and there you are for 16 hours in a day.
So... I think the schooling system's going to get tipped on its head in the next few years, so that'll be an interesting thing to see with AI and all the development. We all walk around with a supercomputer in our pockets, so I think what school is what I knew it as. I think that's going to be vastly different in the next 10 years. But, I think just if you're entrepreneurial and you want to have a go, just study your craft. Pick the very best... If you want to open a restaurant, go and pick the very best restaurant that you would like to open. If you want to open a burger shop, go to Macca's and work at Macca's, or go to the best burger shop and work for free for a month if you can afford it. Because working in a restaurant that serves, if you're a chef and you want to open your own restaurant or you want to train, going and working in a shit place takes just as much effort as going to work in a good place. So why wouldn't you go and work in a good place and learn? So what I'm doing to encourage my young fella who's just started his apprenticeship is once you finish your apprenticeship, go and work in the best places in the world. Go and work for the elite and take all the ideas that you want to away from that and come back and twist them into your own and have a crack.
I mean, it sounds like it's going to be sourdough or somewhere in Paris.
Who knows? I hope it's in Paris. Give me an excuse to go there.
You touched on AI. Yep. Are you excited about what AI could do in the restaurant space?
50% terrified, 50% excited. Yeah. It's we live in an exciting time, and there's already restaurants out there that don't have anybody working in them.
Oh,
Macca's, they're embracing it. But
could you be super specific? This would be could you forecast this? Yep. But when do you honestly think a robot could be serving at Rice Boi?
Oh, it could happen now. The technology's here.
Yeah.
If I went and spent 30 grand a robot, they're arbitrary robots that will just deliver the food, but that technology exists right now. And I was in Japan early this year, and literally order QR code at the table. It's called an izakaya, so it's beverage focused, but with some snacks. But literally, there's somebody in the kitchen cooking, and they just throw the food and the drinks on the robot, and the robot delivers it to your table. That technology's here. It's only going to get better.
Yeah.
But if you're chasing full service robotics, definitely in the next 10 years, it's going to be whatever it is now times 100, let alone what it's going to be in 20 years.
Oh, could you be honest? But have you Googled like how much for a robot? Have you looked?
That's what I mean. When I say 30 grand, that's not. I know factually that's what they are.
Oh, it's like in your shopping cart right now somewhere.
I mean, I don't mean to be rude, but we just came out of COVID where we couldn't find any staff. It was like a perfect storm of we had all the business in the world wanting to come and eat in the restaurants, and we couldn't service them because we didn't have enough staff. And it's still getting better, but it's still problematic.
Yeah.
What will happen, irrefutably, to a lot of trades is that they will be replaced by AI or robotics. That's coming whether or not you like it or not. And if you're not watching that space, you'll end up like Blockbuster.
Yeah. Last question. Can we be excited about any new venues coming up?
Yeah, next year is going to be a good year for us, I reckon. 24 has been a year of consolidation. We've done a couple of renos. Spiro's right now shut, opening in a couple of days. So we've got a couple of new projects in the pipeline. So if those balls drop, which I'm pretty confident they will, you may see a restaurant first quarter next year. We may do another one in the last quarter next year. So the Sunshine Coast is a land of opportunity at the moment. We're pretty excited about it, and the coasties they know how to eat and drink. So we're pretty excited where we're at.
Oh yeah. That's if you're a local on the coast.
Yep.
You know Rice Boi. You know how to eat. You know how to drink.
Yep.
So for sure.
And I think Christmas is going to be a cracker this year. I mean, I know that the cost of living crisis is real, but I don't fall into the doom and gloom with restaurants. I think it's a bit of a game of natural attrition. I've never seen so many restaurants open post-COVID in my life. So the shit ones will go away and the good ones will prosper. Hopefully we can create a couple of new good ones next year.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for sitting
Pleasure.
down with me.
Awesome.
And I'll hopefully catch up with you maybe next year.
Yeah,
We can touch on the
let's
2
do it.
restaurants that you opened, hopefully.
Love to.